I'm finally addressing my nemesis. His name is Danny Zuko.
Ugh.
Hi, I'm LadyJenevia, your resident Grease 2 stan. I've wanted to do a big Grease 2 video for years, but every time I've thought about making that the next thing on my video to-do list, I kept getting overwhelmed by how many things I want to say about Grease 2, and I've always known that I would never be able to properly convey my insistence that of the Grease films, Grease 2 deserves to be the juggernaut of the cultural zeitgeist if I don't first address my issues with the Grease 1 film. Am I being petty for refusing to quietly accept that of the two Grease films, Grease 1 is the pop culture darling? Perhaps, but we're all allowed to indulge in just a bit of pettiness from time to time. The other reason this video had to be delayed was, of course, because the late, great Olivia Newton-John, she passed away last year on the 8th of August, 2022, and I would never have wanted to jump on her name being a trending topic in news headlines while her loved ones were mourning her, and having such a devastating occurrence be such a recent event in their lives. Any harsh words I have for Sandy Olsen are only for Sandy as a fictional character. Olivia Newton-John was a great pop star, and of course I will give that credit where it's due. Additionally, I unironically enjoy Xanadu. That movie is a fun time, and I find it cool that Olivia Newton-John got to be in a musical film with Gene Kelly. If you've followed my channel for a while, you should already know I love Gene Kelly. He is iconic. I grew up watching his films. So I mean it when I say it's cool that she was able to have that experience as part of her journey as an artist and performer. Before we get into my opinions about Grease 1 though, I want to first remind everyone that there is an ongoing SAG-AFTRA and WGA strike. Workers are standing up against the exploitation they've experienced in the entertainment industry. All of these corporations need to sit down and agree to fair working terms, conditions, and wages for the workers whose labor generates the profits these executives are leeching and hoarding. Pay your workers. I will of course include donation links in the pinned comment if you are able and willing to help out in that way. Considering that we are putting a spotlight on the Grease cinematic universe today, it's important to also note that the Grease prequel series, Grease: Rise of the Pink Ladies, was not only cancelled after one season, but after that cancellation, it was also swiftly removed from Paramount Plus, which was the original home and distribution platform for that series. This is a broader problem that's been happening to a lot of workers in the industry who put all of this labor, energy, and love into bringing stories to life on screen, and then their work is just kicked off of the platform where it was supposed to sit and stay for audiences to be able to watch and rewatch them, or even just to be able to discover them for the first time. These corporations decide they want to save money, they want a tax break, and would rather cling to their own greed instead of having any regard for workers or even the fans of these works that get removed from any number of these streaming platforms. I know that there has been some confusion and varying interpretation of what is considered acceptable to talk about during the strikes, but I would imagine that it's perfectly fine for me to encourage people to buy this series on physical media on November 7th when it will be made available, or digital if you would like, where it's already available, but in particular the eventual physical release of this media, because it's entirely evident that people who are running show business, a lot of those people don't know their film history. A lot of the earliest films to be created when film was first invented are lost. They're just gone, and there is no way to get them back. I think it would be an even greater injustice for the incredible people who made the Grease prequel series to have their work lost to the sands of time simply because of corporate greed. Final point in my introduction section, this video, along with every new video I have been producing during the strike here on my channel, are being made from the perspective of SAG having shared and endorsed Variety's published article in which it was stated that critics and entertainment journalists are still allowed to cover films and series. I would, of course, be more than happy to modify my approach to posting on here during the strikes. If anyone from SAG decides to respond to the email I sent them definitely over a month ago by the time this video goes up, but until then, I'm basing my approach on that Variety article and making sure to continue to bring up the strike in my videos and share those donation links in case anyone tuning in to whatever I post has that means of financially supporting workers on strike in that way. Now, on to the topic at hand.
Don't you think they make me look smarter? Nah, you can still see your face.
To understand Grease 1, the 1978 musical film, further context is needed about the source material. The original stage musical from which the film was adapted places a comparatively more well-rounded focus on the characters. Though there are lead characters, it's still ultimately an ensemble piece. There were some things from that stage musical that were toned down in the film adaptation in order to placate the MPAA, but those details aren't all that important for me to be able to make my points about the film's material. The first point I brought up, however, is when the musical was adapted from stage to screen, the focus shifted away from being an ensemble piece to largely prioritize focusing on Danny and Sandy. This decision was made in order to capitalize on the pre-existing fame of John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John. For example, Hopelessly Devoted to You was not a song from the original stage musical, but a new song that was added specifically for Olivia Newton-John. The song was written by Australian songwriter and music producer John Farrar, who wrote multiple songs for Olivia during her career, with their creative collaboration spanning from 1971 to 1989. Hopelessly Devoted to You would go on to be nominated for the Academy Award for Best Original Song. John Farrar also wrote You're the One That I Want, one of the closing songs for Grease 1, which was sung by Olivia Newton-John and John Travolta. In the original stage production of the Grease musical, the romantic reconciliation song for Danny and Sandy was a different one entirely, a song called All Choked Up, which is still available to listen to as it was performed by the original cast.
I'm in a cold sweat, my t-shirt's all wet, I'm all choked up.
Given the success of Grease 1, many of the changes implemented in that film have often bled back into new professional stage productions. There are now many variations for how the Grease musical is performed on stage because of these differences between the original Grease musical and the more pop culturally pervasive perception of Grease in the feature film adaptation. But another key difference I need to emphasize is that many of the songs that were originally sung by other characters were taken away from them in Grease 1. Greased Lightning in the stage musical is Kenickie's song, but in Grease 1, John Travolta is the main singer of it.
Keep talking, won't keep talking.
As a Kenickie stan, naturally I have some feelings about that.
Homicide.
In Grease 1, the song Those Magic Changes is sung by the band at the dance, but also somewhat by Danny when he's dancing with Sandy. It's the part where she compliments him on his singing voice, and his response is to immediately switch to singing it badly.
Did you ever think about taking up singing professionally?
Please come back to me, please. Oh, that's really mature.
However, in the original stage musical, Those Magic Changes is a song sung by Doody.
We already committed murder, we might as well rob his ass.
Without going into full detail, one of the many reasons why I prefer Grease 2 over Grease 1 is that Grease 2 allows more of its pink ladies and T-Birds to shine as characters. Many of them either have their own songs or get their moments to be in the spotlight, even if a song doesn't solely belong to their character. It embraces the ensemble concept far more than Grease 1. By the way, if any of you are thrown off by my saying Grease 1, I'm sticking to that name as a way of making it clear that I'm referring to the feature film instead of the original stage musical or any other version of the story being told on stage or screen. Now, to be clear, I don't completely dislike Grease 1, even if I do like to poke and prod at it. I enjoy a lot of moments from characters that are not named Danny or Sandy. For one, I have developed quite the soft spot for the adult characters of Grease 1, such as Principal McGee, Blanche, and Coach Calhoun.
Do you have the new schedule?
Yes, Miss McGee, I just had my hands on them.
Oh, good. They'll be nice and smudged.
It makes me so happy that they were brought back for Grease 2, because even if they're not the main focus of the story, they bring their own flair and humor to the overall ensemble and viewing experience.
Oh, excuse me. Do you have a pencil, please? Oh, yes, dear. Here you are.
If you grow up watching Grease 1, you can find that your perspective starts to shift over time, where you increasingly find yourself relating to these adults who are definitely not getting paid enough to deal with these juvenile, middle-aged teenagers.
Let's start with the first rule. Cutting on 2 packs a day, eh?
The American government can find money to spend on funding wars, but somehow there's no money when it's time to pay school teachers. It's iconic and completely fitting that Frankie Avalon gets to have the musical cameo he does for Beauty School Dropout, because his career really took off beginning in the late 1950s as a teen idol, and Grease 1 takes place in the late 1950s. I like the tertiary roster of Pink Ladies and T-Birds to varying degrees. The main thing that stands out in my mind for the tertiary T-Birds is the sequence where they're essentially doing a Three Stooges homage. It's such classic physical comedy, and they've clearly done their choreography really well. Regardless of this being a brief moment that has little to no impact on the overall narrative, it's my favorite memory of them as characters in this film. Jan is silly in a fun way, and her brief romantic interactions with Putsy are awkward, but nonetheless endearing.
You sure are a cheap date. Well, I didn't mean it the way it came out.
I understand.
I always thought you were a very understanding person.
I am.
Out of all the Pink Ladies and T-Birds, they are especially convincing in portraying the high school age of their characters. Marty has a surprisingly poignant storyline involving her interest in an older man, the host of the televised show at the school dance, Vince Fontaine. Now, I will give credit to the actor Ed Burns because he was very convincing as a predatory creep. Marty had already expressed a propensity for getting involved with evil older men by way of being a pen pal to war criminals who are overseas doing things like helping to murder 20% of Korea's population.
What's that?
From Bobby in Korea. Are you going with a Korean? Dummy's a Marine.
But things get more real for Marty, and quickly, once that man is not just some creep on the other side of the world being one of her many pen pals, but a man that is getting up close in person.
Hey, do your folks know I come into your room every night? Over KZAZ, that is.
Coach Carr, step away from the underage girls.
Later on, after the dance is finished, Marty reveals that Vince Fontaine attempted to drug her for... well, we can all guess what his dubious intentions were.
I caught Vince Fontaine trying to put aspirin on my coke at the dance.
Demon! I will kill you as many times as I have to.
This revelation is little more than a small exchange between two teenage girls that might not have the most significant impact on the larger narrative of the film's story and what's receiving focus, but there's no denying that it's a cautionary tale to all the young, impressionable viewers watching to be very wary of predators. That celebrity you're putting on a pedestal and engage in hero worship towards, they might actually turn out to be terrible. And how many times have we seen that with real-life Hollywood celebrities? Too many to count. My favorite Pink Lady in the tertiary roster is Frenchie, and that should not surprise anyone.
Sandy, men are rats. Worse than that. They're amoebas on fleas on rats.
I would have played her entire Amoebas on Fleas on Rats speech because I love it so much. But I'll tell you now, just in case any of you are ever interested in getting into making videos about Hollywood films or television series that you would like to publish on YouTube, there are two mega corporations you need to avoid showing footage from in extended duration: NBC Universal and Viacom. The Grease films were distributed by Paramount Pictures. Guess what Paramount's parent company is? Viacom. I used to have a Rocket Man review here on my channel. It's not up anymore. Why is that? Well, Viacom decided to violate fair use to try to abscond with my ad revenue, all 57 cents of it. I also used to have a Terminator Dark Fate review that was also favorable because I was telling the truth in that review, which is that the movie is a sapphic love story, and I love a good romance.
Lesbian.
Viacom manually blocked that video worldwide.
You're a pack of fools! Every last one of you!
So my point stands. Limit your footage and keep your clips short for Viacom material. YouTube knows about all of this, by the way, and they do not do anything about it. I don't know how much gets mentioned about the broader characters in Grease 1 since I don't typically engage in much discourse about the film. I'm usually too busy just telling people to watch Grease 2. But one of the more striking revelations that stands out the more that the years go by is how mean-spirited I find a lot of the Pink Ladies and T-Bird's energy to be. The story frames them as the main characters whom you're meant to relate to and root for, but they really often come across like bullies in this film. Eugene is picked on, presumably for being studious, academic. His physical appearance and demeanor is giving that stereotypical nerd or brainiac archetype. Now, if this story was set in the 2020s and you had done something like paint him out to be a weird, aggro, terminally online incel, I probably would have said to just go for it and pick on him. I don't care. But in this film, Eugene is just there to be a punching bag.
What's your name? I want you.
It's Eugene.
You're a great picture.
Oh, thank you.
Then we have Tom, who never does anything rude or mean, but just because he's a jock, we're supposed to dislike him on principle?
Ladies and gentlemen, dingleberries on parade.
Yeah. Hey, look! You really put your foot into it this time, Chisholm.
Yeah, try hot flush, you hot dog.
Grease 1 really feels like an anomaly in the larger pool of Hollywood pop culture set in high school. It's quite common to see the mean girls of high school stories be cheerleaders and for male jocks to be bullies. In general, those who are at the top of the high school popularity pyramid feel like a symbolic depiction of the recurring tendency for people who have undeserved power, being cruel and lacking in empathy for others. But when I try to unpack the social dynamics of Grease 1, it's just interesting to see where it fits or perhaps doesn't fit into those patterns of high school cliques and the distribution of power within Hollywood media set in high school. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the gangs in Grease 2 don't also have their moments of picking on other people as well, but it just really comes across differently. It's a different energy when it's Adrian Zmed as Johnny Nogarelli being the ringleader because he struck a more comedic balance in his delivery, and well, really, I could say a whole lot more about that in his favor, but we will definitely need to save that for another day.
That's very nice. Nice penmanship.
Now let's address my nemesis, or my nemeses, Danny Zuko and Sandy Olsen. Oh boy, where do I begin? Danny Zuko is a pig. Not the government-funded kind, but the scumbag you should never date kind. The whole T-Bird gang is pretty icky in their language and behavior towards women, though if you wanted to chalk that up to period typical sexism, you would at least hope that the main romantic story they're engaging in would be more endearing. Like I said earlier, in the case of Jan and Putsy, I find their interactions to be effective in that way. Yes, Putsy is shown to be looking up the skirts of girls at school, which I find gross, but him and Jan being so peculiar and juvenile in their flirtations towards each other, I don't know, I felt like they made sense as an item. But let's go through Danny and Sandy's relationship arc. They have a fling together over the summer, and it's painted out to be romantic with the ocean waves crashing and the sunset. I'm sure many straight or bi girls dream of having an entitled boy throw sand at them, though certainly not I.
I don't like sand.
Danny also demonstrates a pushiness towards physical intimacy, which Sandy does not reciprocate. If your person pushes you off, your response should not be to excuse it.
Spoil it.
It's not spoiling it, Sandy. It's only making it better.
Danny doesn't learn the meaning of consent, though, at any point in this story. That's just not something that is in his character material. Jump ahead to Rydell. It turns out Sandy hasn't moved away, and these two are instead at the same school, and since it's the 1950s, they don't have the option to just text each other, hey, guess what? I'm not moving. Let's meet up. The Pink ladies learn that Sandy's summer fling was Danny Zuko. So they orchestrate a reunion. And it doesn't go well.
Danny?
That's my name. Don't wear it out.
What's the matter with you?
What's the matter with me, baby? What's the matter with you?
But I knew who they were, and I told her who they were. Shitheads.
He's too preoccupied with looking cool or whatever it is that motivates this weirdo into doing the things he does. And all of that, his image, is more important than the feelings of the person he's meant to be falling in love with. Cool. Thanks. I hate that. Now, if these two had a love story that was written well, you might think that his character arc would be that he learns to not care about looking cool more than he cares about his budding romance with Sandy. But no, that's just a perpetual character trait of his.
My parents want to invite you over tea on Sunday. Do you want to come?
I don't like tea.
Why'd you look at your friends, Danny? Just go meet her parents if you really want this relationship to work. But their tiff at the pep rally really hurt Sandy's feelings. She's upset, and Danny has a pattern of making her feel this way. That's another perpetual character trait of his, being hurtful. But make no mistake, I'm by no means a Sandy fan. And you might be asking, well, why is that? For starters, she treats Tom horribly. She starts dating him after this horrible encounter she has with Danny. And the two had already been shown to have some sort of interest in each other earlier at the pep rally, before she had learned that Danny also goes to this school.
Sandy, I got this image, right? I got this
Well, that's why I'm
image.
so glad that Tom's such a simple person.
But anyway, they begin dating, and Sandy is only using him to try to make Danny jealous.
Is he taking you to the dance?
Well, that all depends.
On what?
On you.
On me?
Yeah.
Sandy never officially breaks up with Tom either, by the way. She just laughs at Danny for being hurtful at Tom, I guess because for once it's not directed at her.
Well...
Tom is never shown to be horrible in how he treats Sandy. He's a horrible dancer, but that's not reason enough for Sandy to use this poor boy and then just gleefully run off with her scumbag ex.
He can stab you.
That's the only thing Danny and Sandy have in common with each other anyway. Being horrible to Tom.
So 2 ass loads.
Wow.
So they reconcile and go to the dance together, where Danny has a bit of an awkward run-in with one of his many former flings, because here's the thing about Danny Zuko. He gets around.
You guys get a look at Zuko this morning? Looking pretty good this year, huh, Riz?
That's ancient history.
Oh, wait a minute. I've already done that.
I'm shocked. This is shocking news.
Hi, Danny.
I can't talk to you right now.
Listen, what are you doing later?
I can't talk, all right?
Call me.
Take it away before I gag.
He lies to Sandy about knowing Cha-Cha, and then when Cha-Cha gets in the middle of their dance, what does Danny do? He keeps dancing with her while Sandy runs away upset. Sandy, where is your self-respect? Not to mention the fact that all of this is happening during a musical number means that I'm interpreting this as not just a dance between Danny and Sandy, if you know how storytelling works through the musical genre, be it on stage or film. Not everything that happens needs to be interpreted literally. It can be more symbolic or surreal or abstract. Do you think the characters of An American in Paris literally stopped what they were doing to be transported to another set to perform a ballet number that's over 10 minutes long? No, of course not. It's there for artistic purposes. Therefore, to me, Danny continuing to dance with Cha-Cha when she runs up on him during the dance translates to Cha-Cha made a move on Danny and he carried on with it. He cheated on Sandy at the dance, and when she confronts him about it later on, he lies because all this man can do is lie, cheat, and violate boundaries.
Well, yes, but I still think that you and Cha-Cha went together.
We did not go together, Sandy. We just went together, that's all.
Same thing.
No.
Sandy clearly demonstrates throughout the movie that she does not want to be overly physically intimate with Danny. When you also take into account that she's supposed to be a teenager, underage,
she's a child!
It's so much more disgusting that Danny continually demonstrates a disregard for her bodily autonomy. The drive-in scene is always my go-to explanation when people are confused about the fact that I have such a strong disdain for Danny and Sandy, but Danny in particular. He has just cheated on Sandy. She is unhappy with him. So what does he do? He decides to give her his ring, and in the process of removing his ring, he accidentally physically hurts her.
Sandy, I'm sorry.
And he finds that to be funny. Then when he gives her the ring, what does she say? She's happy that he respects her.
Because I know now that you respect me.
And he finds this to be exasperating. He is appalled that his meager gesture doesn't have a payoff of physical intimacy at the drive-in. So what does he do? He violates her bodily autonomy.
Sandy, don't worry about it. Nobody's watching.
Danny, get off me!
Sandy, what's the matter with you?
Solar plexus, instep, nose, point!
I find this couple, but this whole scene in particular, upsetting. There are so many people who have come to realize how gross a lot of John Hughes movies are, and the violation of consent in 16 Candles is rightly called out, but for some reason, I don't see nearly enough condemnation of Grease for doing the exact same thing.
I thought I meant something to you.
To you? You think I'm gonna stay here with you in this sin wagon?
Also, Sandy's choice of words, sin wagon. I'm presuming there's some sort of religious beliefs she has that are influencing her desire to not be physically intimate with Danny. I'm not religious. I don't have a problem with premarital physical intimacy, but the point stands that Sandy does not want this. But all Danny Zuko ever does is push. I hate this man.
Flames on the side of my face.
And you know what this movie does to add insult to injury? What does Danny Zuko do after sexually assaulting his girlfriend? He sings a song about how sad he is about how Sandy hurt his feelings.
Sandy, my darling, you hurt me real bad. You know it's true.
Do you ever see something that provokes so much rage that you want to learn how to build a spear? Or learn how to do archery? So Danny has crossed line after line, and this is by far his most egregious transgression to date. What does Danny do to try to mend the damage to his relationship with Sandy? What's the solution to assaulting your girlfriend at the drive-in? He tries to join a sports team. Because what better way is there to apologize to your girlfriend for repeatedly harming her emotionally and physically than to become a jock?
I lettered in track. How do you like that? I can't believe it. Danny Zuko turned jock? That's right, I did.
Are you on drugs?
There is not a single coherent thought in this man's head.
You vainglorious buffoon.
I think if you asked Danny Zuko how many continents there are, he would say 3.
Oh, come on, guys. You know you mean a lot to me. It's just that Sandy does too, and I'm gonna do anything I can to get her, that's it.
No! It's just dumb!
If Danny Zuko was a real person, I would pull an Amélie Poulain. I would do a bunch of minute alterations to his living space until he is psychologically fractured and incapacitated. I would be doing the world a favor. Now, I've already said before that I'm not a fan of Sandy either. She was absolutely horrible to Tom. But if she had had some sort of character development or resolution to her character arc, I wouldn't necessarily hold the Tom thing against her as much as I do. Women in fiction should be allowed to make mistakes and do the wrong thing because people are flawed. It's a universal human trait. But Sandy just stays terrible for the entire story. Instead of her having a much-needed epiphany that the only thing she should be giving Danny Zuko is a restraining order or perhaps a good right hook, she decides that the solution to their relationship woes, all of which are entirely his fault, is to fundamentally change everything about her physical appearance, change her way of living, because going from hating cigarettes to now deciding to poison yourself with the most rancid-smelling cancer sticks is somehow the way to keep a man. Please don't ask me to go on a rant about Hollywood's complicity in big tobacco propaganda. I'm already at my limit here. And somehow that's the happy ending that catapults this movie into being a pop culture darling.
I never want to see you again! You suck! Ah!
I despise Danny Zuko as far as fictional characters go. He's either at the top of the list or at the very least, he's very high on my list of enemies. Sandy, if you want to wear your conservative clothing because you're more comfortable dressing that way, you should do that. If you want to experiment with black eyeshadow, leather, and spandex, you should do that. But do it for you. Don't do it for a spineless loser of a man who doesn't know what consent is.
I see you, Miran! I see you! With your fucking Miran mustache!
Now, I would have never wanted to end this video on an angry, upset note. I want to go out singing the praises of the superior couple from Grease 1, which is, of course, Rizzo and Kenickie. These two are everything to me whenever I do a Grease 1 rewatch. For as much as I despise Danny and Sandy, you flip that amount to the other side of the spectrum, and that is exactly how much I love Rizzo and Kenickie. Danny and Sandy could never be on their level. They don't have their power, their charisma, they don't have their anything. So let's talk about them. And can we please give it up for Jeff Conaway and Stockard Channing for serving absolutely everything with their performances. The line delivery of "What are you, my mother?" lives in my head rent-free.
Where were you all summer?
What are you, my mother?
Now, let's go through their relationship timeline. Rizzo climbs out of her window to get her kicks while she's still young enough to get them.
You goody-goodies are too much for me. I'm gonna get my kicks when I'm still young enough to get them.
The T-Bird Stooges drop a bit of sexism, and Kenickie, he's not having any of that.
So a bunch you are rushing to help a lady.
Lady? I don't see a lady.
Shut up. Right. Shut up.
Defending her from sexism? Hot.
Yeah, it's called flirting, you idiot.
Then they start flirting and the chemistry is just fire. The chemistry is piping hot.
What's up, Kenickie?
Let me guess.
You got a lot to offer a girl.
Yeah, you know it.
It's my favorite movie of all time.
Yeah, me too.
I swear these two, they have me giggling and kicking my feet every time I watch this scene. Maybe I want what they have. Maybe they're the only Grease 1 couple that matters to me. So they go to some local hookup spot. I don't know where they are, but they get going. And if you're going to hook up, you should use protection. Kenickie brought protection. Why? Because he's prepared. He's been prepared. But then, a problem.
What?
It broke.
25.
Like 20.
Why did it break?
I bought it when I was in the 7th grade.
Not Kenickie being the funniest person in this movie. But when it becomes apparent that they don't have protection, what does Kenickie do? He stays in his spot. He keeps his hands to himself. And it isn't until Rizzo makes a move to continue hooking up that he starts getting involved again. Do you know why? Because unlike my nemesis, Danny Zuko, Kenickie knows what consent is.
What the hell?
Are these two being irresponsible by hooking up without protection? Yes, but that's kind of the entire point of their story, so we continue. Things are progressing, and Rizzo, she's feisty, she's hot-tempered, but my boy Kenickie, he takes it all in stride.
You pig!
I love it when you talk dirty.
I love that he doesn't get offended by her. I love their banter. I love everything about them. Now, this scene at the diner is one of the turning points in their relationship. Things take a turn because Rizzo pushes Kenickie away. It's something that she's heavily implied to do as part of a larger pattern of behavior, one that we will get into in a bit. He tries to approach her later on, perhaps thinking she's had time to cool off, but she's still not interested. So they both do their teenage antics of, well, I'm going to go to the school dance with someone else now. How about that? Why do I start swaying to and fro? Is this a healthy way of dealing with relationship woes? No, but they're teenagers. I'm willing to give them some room to do things wrong and be juvenile so long as the overall arc is compelling and satisfying, which I do find to be the case, unlike with Danny and Sandy. The next major development in Rizzo's story is that she has a pregnancy scare. Eventually, she and the audience by extension learn that it's only a pregnancy scare and not an actual pregnancy, but we haven't reached that point yet. She tells Marty, who is a blabbermouth, so word spreads quickly. So much so that Kenickie finds out basically immediately. He approaches her because they've been hooking up, and he's completely ready to take responsibility for playing his part in what happened. Rizzo made the first move to continue hooking up without protection, but Kenickie didn't stop her either. He didn't say, "Hey there, gorgeous, how about we hold off until I can get a new one that is not from 7th grade, one that isn't broken." They were both consenting, willing, very eager. I don't think Kenickie gets nearly enough credit for stepping up as a, 17-year-old boy? I don't know how old he's supposed to be. If this is their senior year of high school, I would guess that he's 17 or 18 years old, and this is the 1950s, but he's stepping up, he's taking responsibility for his actions.
I thought I might be able to do something.
You did enough.
I don't want to wait for my mistakes.
But Rizzo tells him it was someone else. Rizzo is pretty standoffish in general. She has her friends, but there's this snarky demeanor to her general attitude and behavior. When Rizzo tells Kenickie the maybe baby is not his, what is his response?
Thanks a lot, kid.
The only thing I get from that line delivery is that he's hurt. He doesn't lash out, he doesn't lose his temper, he doesn't say anything sexist, he doesn't shame her for maybe being pregnant. All things considered, he's handling a very intense situation very well. He leaves to go be sad and hurt. Valid response without being toxic. Now, if we jump forward to Rizzo's solo song, There Are Worse Things I Could Do, I think that subtextually, this is essential to understanding Rizzo as a character. There's a level of self-awareness you might not realize she has without this song about her behavior, but I think one of the verses in the song implies a troubled home life. When she sings the line, "I could stay home every night, wait around for Mr. Right, take cold showers every day, and throw my life away on a dream that won't come true." There really is no reason for Rizzo to be this cynical about love and romance at such a young age, unless she has a dysfunctional home life. So you can create any number of scenarios at home that would make sense. Maybe her father abandoned her and her mother. Maybe he's coming in and out of the house. Maybe Rizzo is the product of an extramarital affair in which her mother was unknowingly the other woman and he's already got another family in a different city. Yes, that's just me using the backstory from No Hard Feelings, but if the shoe fits, there you have it. The only thing that makes sense for Rizzo, for her to be behaving the way she is, to have an unhealthy relationship with being physically intimate with this many men when she is an underage teenager, that's coming from a place of hurt. She's not an independent adult woman making decisions about her life. She's a vulnerable teenage girl. But with that song, the concluding sentiment expresses a fear or perhaps an unwillingness to be vulnerable with Kenickie. But to cry in front of you, that's the worst thing I could do. She's singing that line about Kenickie. Why would she not want to be vulnerable with Kenickie? Because Kenickie is different. because Kenickie is a good guy, because she actually feels a deeper romantic connection to him than she does with whatever other boys she's hooked up with in her life. When all is said and done, Kenickie still wants Rizzo to be okay, and if she is in fact pregnant, for her to be good and safe in whatever ways she needs to be as an expecting mother. But guess what? She's not pregnant.
Forget it! It was a false alarm! What? I'm not pregnant!
You know what the other Kenickie line is that lives in my head rent-free? That's a bona fide offer.
Listen, fella, this is a line. I ain't biting.
That's a bona fide offer.
Maybe it's the accent, I don't know. Maybe it's Jeff Conaway's off-the-charts charisma in this role, but I just love Rizzo and Kenickie together. I love that Kenickie was patient and supportive for her, and that him being that way gave her the safe space she needed to finally be able to open herself up to having something real and more substantial than the quick, meaningless flings she's used to having. They are so cute together. Their chemistry is so hot. And to be clear, I don't have a problem describing it that way because of the many jokes that have been made about how the whole cast of Rydell students in Grease 1 looks like they're in their 30s. All these actors were adults when they filmed this, and they very much look like adults.
I was just going for a walk.
You were just dawdling, weren't you?
Yes, ma'am.
I rest my case. I am both the judge and jury when I make my videos, so my final ruling is that Rizzo and Kenickie are the superior couple in Grease 1. The only reason why I can keep rewatching this film and suffer through Danny and Sandy's abominable relationship is because Rizzo and Kenickie throw their backs out from carrying this movie. I love them. I want a new rom-com that has a couple with their type of energy because I don't know if I can think of one quickly that's all that similar to the relationship dynamic they have. George Clooney and Julia Roberts definitely served some good bickering banter recently in Ticket to Paradise, but it's still not quite the same. I want two wisecracking people, but the guy needs to not so secretly be really sweet and understanding. It's just wild to me that Danny and Sandy have this monopoly of attention in broader pop culture, regardless of John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John being the more recognizable names. I just don't think that should make a difference. Flow is flow.
Flow is flow.
The only couple that was serving quality flow in this movie was Rizzo and Kenickie.
I got so many hickeys, people will think I'm a leper.
Cheer up. Hickey from Kenickie's like a Hallmark card.
You're not as vile as I thought you were.
Hopefully, if you've made it this far, you now have clarity about my general stance on the various characters and stories in Grease 1. I have no idea when I will get around to doing a full Grease 2 video, but I do feel liberated now that this is at least finished. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you to my patrons, all of whom got early access to this video. And by the time this goes live, they will probably know what my next video topic is. Bye.
You're making honest woman of you.
I love that you want to walk outside with me.
Maybe true love is having someone not be afraid of your emotions, holding you close, and saying, that's a bona fide offer. Who knew that was the secret to happiness all along?